Good afternoon. We are so thrilled to see all of you here today for the Gayle Forman and Jandy Nelson in Conversation. My name is Mel, and I'm an events associate here at the University Bookstore. The University Bookstore is the oldest independent bookstore in Washington State. We host roughly 400 events annually, and we are always happy to entertain all of you. You can find a list of our upcoming events on our website, or you can follow us on Facebook or Twitter. We would love to see you again. Gayle Forman is an award-winning, internationally best-selling author and journalist. She is the author of Just One Day and Just One Year, and the companion e-novella Just One Night, as well as the New York Times bestsellers If I Stay and Where She Went. She also has a movie. Maybe some of you have seen it. She lives in Brooklyn, New York with her husband and daughters. Jandy Nelson, like her characters in I'll Give You the Sun, comes from a superstitious lot. Currently a full-time writer, Jandy lives and writes in San Francisco, California, not far from the settings of The Sky is Everywhere and I'll Give You the Sun. A few last notes before we get started. If you parked in our lot, I would be happy to validate your parking pass afterwards if Ryland hasn't already done that. Books are available for purchase just behind us, over that way on the display, and like I said, that one hardcover is downstairs. You can go over to the children's section, which is just on the other side to purchase those. Now please join me in welcoming Gayle Forman and Jandy Nelson.
Hi everybody.
Hello, Seattle. You came out on a sunny day, but I hear you've been having a lot of those lately. You're taking them for granted. Yeah. Like, oh, sun. We know what that is.
I'm very happy to be here. We were at PNBA last night, and after every table I talked to, I was like, everybody here is so nice. It's true. It seems like a wonderful place. So, how shall we begin? Do you want to read
Jandy.
first? Let's read first.
Well, I think we should get a little bit of background of how we're like twins separated at birth, maybe. It's true. It's. I'm going to talk about how I first met Jandy, which is that I read an early copy of The Sky is Everywhere. And I had like several reactions to it. One of which was like, I don't know why I bother writing when people out here are doing things like this. I should just stop. And the other was like, I hope she doesn't think I copied, even though it was impossible, because If I Stay came out a few months earlier. But I'm like, she's going to think I copied all this stuff, because there was all of these things that felt like total bizarro similarities.
Yeah, I mean, and it was very interesting because when I read If I Stay, at the last half of that book, I was literally on the floor crying, and I felt such a kindred spirit to the author. And again, for so many similarities in the book, weird similarities, like the similarities of the music and the grief and Juilliard, and there was just so many similarities. And I was so beside myself and so moved and couldn't stop crying, and I just loved it so much. And then strangely, when my book came out, Gayle got in touch with me.
And then we discovered that we have like bizarre similarities. Like, do you want to talk about the Grandpa Sydney mirror?
Well, I want to talk about the house, but I'll talk
flowers?
about, okay, so in The Sky is Everywhere, the strangest part of The Sky is Everywhere, one of the strangest
There's
things.
so many
yeah,
strange
there
parts.
are some
I want to
parts.
go to the San Francisco part where this is Northern California that you have created.
It's a quirky book, and it's a quirky family, and a lot of the quirks in the family comes from my family. And the grandmother in The Sky is Everywhere monitors the behavior of the main character by a plant, a house plant. And so when the book opens, this house plant is covered in spots. And so they know that Lenny, the main character, is doing horribly. And this seems like kind of like a literary device maybe to some of you. No. When I was growing up, my mother had a house plant. And it persisted throughout my whole high school, and then when I went to college. So I was away at college, and I would get these frantic phone calls from my mother. And she would say things like, Jandy, what's wrong? The plant has spots, just like in the book. And so it was this very odd thing, very peculiar, and that's something that was very particular, I thought, to my family, until
My sister's giggling back here because she will talk about we have a mother who judges our well-being based upon mostly our rose bushes. Sometimes hydrangea, lately it's been hydrangea, but mostly the rose bushes. Because like she will say, yeah, I can see it's been a rough year for you. You hardly have any buds this year. You are having an amazing time because your rose bush is out of control. So that was the first bizarro similarity that we had. And it went on from there.
Oh, and we'll tell you one more bizarre, but we have so many. But this one was an unbelievable thing. I had a mirror in my house, and it was in my hallway. And every time I passed this mirror, I would say...
Not every time.
Pretty much.
Okay.
No, honestly.
Yeah.
There was something about it. And every time I passed by, I would say to myself, oh, Grandpa Sidney. And it was sort of like, because I looked ancient in this mirror. I looked like my grandfather Sidney. And then one day I saw on Facebook that you'd posted.
Right. I'm like, I just passed a mirror and I saw my grandfather in it.
And it was another very weird little thing. So.
But now we realize how much it extends to our books as well. Because it was one thing with If I Stay and Sky, but it sort of has now transcended that, because we were talking about I'll Give You the Sun and Just One Day, Just One Year, and they actually both do similar things, even though they're very different stories, where we have these dual narratives going on. And separately, they tell separate stories, and neither story is complete. And you, the reader, have a perspective that neither of the characters have, because you have seen the whole story. When that book closes, you like to imagine that they will explain things and figure everything out, and then everything will become clear. But you, as the reader, have that overarching view, and that's the same thing that we have with Just One Day and Just One Year, where the books are like transparencies. You have one story as you read one, and then you read the other and you see the whole story. So you have a perspective that is much bigger and more understanding and more sympathetic in many ways than the readers do. Than the characters do. So it's and then we also we keep having characters. We have the same name. You have a Jude. I have a Jude in the upcoming book. We now both have Garcias. It's crazy town. So we thought we would do a couple of readings showing the kind of overlapping, and just to make it exciting and to give me an opportunity to do an English accent. We're going to make them dramatic readings, and we're going to read from each other's books, doing characters. So and largely, completely unrehearsed. And we're going to start with you.
Really unrehearsed. Yeah. You have to understand. Okay, so I'll just
we have to sit closer.
But first, I'm going to briefly talk about.
Talk about your book.
I'll just say
her book that, by the way, debuted on the New York Times bestseller list this week at #8. Also, that was the Indie List #1.
Oh my God, she's my new publicist.
Entertainment Weekly gave it like an A- and one of the most effusive reviews I have ever seen.
And Carrie, to be her
quiet.
publicist.
You're trying to say, okay, about your book.
Just
Stop,
very quickly.
stop.
I was lucky enough to get to celebrate with Gayle when her book hit #1 on the New York Times bestseller list. And it was honestly, I found out maybe on Facebook, but I happened to be in Whole Foods. I started screaming to her on the telephone in the supermarket. I was beside myself with happiness for her.
How much can quinoa cost?
Okay, so anyway, I just want to briefly, it was very interesting what Gayle was saying, though, about these dual narratives, because we didn't really even think our new books had anything in common until we were walking in San Francisco one day, and I was like, Gayle, it happened again. You're just doing it in 2 books, and I did it in 1 book. And so one thing about this, the interesting thing for me about this book is that even though it's 1 book, it was really almost like writing 3 books, because it's a story of twins, Noah and Jude, and these twins have always been inseparable, and then something happens and a rift comes between them and they have a falling out, and the story is told in dueling point of views, from the boy when they're 13 and from the girl when they're 16. And when I was writing it, I really realized to write it I almost had to write both 3 novels, like Noah's start to finish, Jude's start to finish, and then I intertwine them, which is almost like exactly the same thing, except that Gayle did, but in the different books. So. Okay.
How are we going to do this? I need to be closer.
All right, I'm going to read Noah. I'm going to do the Noah first.
Okay, that's going to give me time to relocate.
We have not rehearsed this, guys. Okay.
Just be closer to you, Jandy. Closer.
Okay. So today we're both going to read from both the point of view characters in our novels. And so I'm going to start with Noah, who's 13. And really all you need to know is that the twins that were always so close, a perfect storm is happening between them, and their mother wants them to apply to a very prestigious art school, and it's this perfect storm of competition has developed. And so, and there's a rift between them where there never had been before. And Noah, who is constantly like with his telescope on the roof spying, that's what he's doing, he's on the roof spying. And he says, oh, and another thing you have to know is he's always drawing. So in the book are his paintings. So when he's in these heightened emotional moments, his paintings appear in the text as a portrait or a self-portrait. So that's what that is when I read it. Okay. I find Jude on the beach and zoom in. She's surrounded by the same bunch of girls she's been hanging around with all spring and so far this summer instead of me. Pretty hornet girls in bright bikinis with suntans that glimmer for miles. I know all about hornets. If one sends out a distress signal, it can trigger a whole nest attack. This can be deadly to people like me. Mom says Jude acts the way she does now on account of hormones, but I know it's on account of her hating me. She stopped going to museums with us ages ago, which is probably a good thing, because when she did, her shadow kept trying to strangle mine. I'd see it happening on the walls or on the floor. Sometimes lately, I catch her shadow creeping around my bed at night, trying to pull the dreams out of my head. I have a good idea what she does instead of going to museums, though. 3 times now, I've seen hickeys on her neck. Bug bites, she said. Sure. I heard while spying that she and Courtney Barrett have been riding bikes down to the boardwalk on weekends where they see who can kiss more boys. Portrait, Jude braiding boy after boy into her hair. The truth is, Jude doesn't have to send her shadow after me. It's not like she can't take Mom down to the beach and show her one of her flying sandwomen before the tide wipes it out. It would change everything. Not that I want that, not one bit. The other day, I was watching her make one from the bluff. She was at her place 3 coves away. This time it was a big round woman, like always, except she was halfway turned into a bird. So incredible, it made my head vibrate. I snapped a picture with Dad's camera, but then something really horrible and maggoty came over me, and as soon as Jude had walked off and was out of sight and earshot, I slid down the whole cliff, raced through the sand, and roaring like a howler monkey, knocked into the awesome bird woman with my whole body toppling and kicking it to nothing. I couldn't even wait for the tide to take it out this time. I got sand everywhere, in my eyes and ears and down my throat. I kept finding it on me days after, in my bed, in my clothes, under my nails. But I had to do it. It was too good. What if Mom had gone for a walk and seen it? Because what if it's Jude who has it? Why wouldn't that be the case? She surfs waves as big as houses and jumps off anything. She has skin that fits, and friends, and Dad, and the sweet wine gift, and gills and fins in addition to lungs and feet. She gives off light, I give off dark. Portrait, twins, the flashlight and the flash dark. Ugh, my body's tightening into a wrung towel from thinking like this, and all the colors draining off everything. Self-portrait, gray Noah eating gray apples on gray grass. So that things brighten up. I'm leaving it there, but things brighten up in the next second because he spies Noah's very attracted to other guys, and he spies these very hot movers moving a piano into the house next door, and also spies on the roof a very cute new boy, the new boy in town.
A cute new boy in town. I think for this next section, does anybody have a pair of sunglasses and a leather jacket I could borrow?
Why don't we switch? Why don't we read one from just one day and then we'll go back?
You want to?
I don't know.
Okay, we can do that. All right, never mind. Well, hold
Well,
off on that.
It's up to you. Would you rather do it all at once?
I don't know. Okay. Let's do yours. I feel like mine's better.
Okay,
Let's do
all
it.
right. All right, so now we're going to switch to Jude. It's 3 years later.
Again, the leather jacket and glasses.
Anybody?
You got some sunglasses.
Yeah, we
all right,
definitely
that'll
have
work.
it.
Thank you.
So, okay, it's 3 years later. Things have very much changed.
Bring up the sunglasses. And you just want a copy if I was here, so keep it on.
Yeah, good job. No leather jacket?
got a leather jacket.
Oh, perfect. He's
We got a leather
perfect.
jacket. There we go.
He's actually perfect.
Do you want him to read?
No. Oh, this is hysterical. Thank you so much. Oh my God! This is so funny. This is hysterical. Okay, he is incarnated from the novel.
He's Willem too,
He
right?
just walks out of the pages.
Can you just stand right there for
You're
all
just
of these readings? Just look at him.
This is so perfect. Okay, this is very funny. Yeah, thank you. This is wonderful.
Luca.
Luca,
Oh my
you're
God.
just going to be here for
His
like the
name is
next
Luca.
half hour. It's all good. Okay? Thank you.
Okay, so this is 3 years later. Jude, it's Jude's point of view. Jude is 16. She is a very different person now. She is wildly a superstitious maniac. She is a hypochondriac.
Other things we have in
She,
common.
yes,
Wildly
yeah.
superstitious.
Wildly superstitious, hypochondriac, and she's also now on a boy boycott. She wants nothing to do with boys, except she had this encounter with Luca. And Luca was taking pictures of her, and she felt things she hasn't in a while, and she's very frightened. And here's her second interaction with this guy. But our Luca is named Oscar, and he has an English accent, but still. Okay.
Tonight, playing the part of Luca, playing the part of Oscar, is Gayle Forman.
Okay, so here we go.
Where are we?
Are you ready? Okay,
Yeah.
right. All right. You have to understand we have not practiced, so we're winging it,
Yeah.
and we appreciate your help.
Thank you.
Okay. I watch The Adrenal Happy Driver. You know.
I don't know where I am.
You'll know. You only have to say
Okay.
there. Okay, you're there. Okay. I watch the adrenal unhappy driver who thinks he's at the Indy 500 boomerang a turn at such an extreme angle the side of the bike scrapes the street. Geez, no offense, but what a stupid, reckless idiot. Sorry. Evel Knievel screeches once again, but to a halt this time, not 15 feet from me, and takes off his helmet. Oh, of course, and in sunglasses this time. Someone call medevac. Oh.
Well, hello there. The fallen angel has returned.
He doesn't talk, he lilts. His words taken to the air like birds. And why do English people sound smarter than the rest of us? Like they should be awarded the Nobel Prize for a simple greeting. I zip up my sweatshirt to the neck, but can't seem to get the boy blinders back on. Still a reckless idiot, yes. But damn, he looks fine sitting on that bike on this sunny winter day. Guys like him shouldn't be allowed on motorcycles. They should have to bounce around on pogo sticks, or better, hippity hops. And no hot guy should be allowed to have an English accent and drive a motorcycle. Not to mention wear the leather jacket, or sport the cool shades. Hot guys should be forced into footy pajamas. Yes, the boycott, the boycott. Still, I'd like to say something this time so he doesn't think I'm a mute. Well, hello there, I offer, mimicking him exactly, English accent and all. Oh no, I feel my face flushing. Losing the accent, I quickly add, nice turn back there.
Ah, yes, I have a problem with impulse control, or so I'm quite frequently told.
Great. 6 feet of bad luck and impulse control issues. I cross my arms like Guillermo. You probably have an underdeveloped frontal lobe. That's where self-control comes from. This cracks him up. It makes his face go everywhere at once.
Well, thank you for the medical opinion, much appreciated.
I like that I made him laugh. A nice laugh. Easy, friendly, lovely really, not that I notice. Oh. So what kind of impulses can't you control, I ask?
Not a one, I'm afraid. That's the problem.
This is the problem. He's tailor-made to torture. I'm betting he's at least 18. Betting he stands alone at parties, leaning against walls. Thank you. Knocking back shots while long-legged girls in fire engine red mini dresses slink up to him. Granted, I haven't been to a lot of parties lately, but I have seen a lot of movies, and he's that guy. The lawless, solitary, hurricane-hearted one who wreaks havoc, blowing through towns, through girls, through his own tragic, misunderstood life. A real bad boy, not like the fake ones at my art school with their ink and piercings and trust funds and cigarettes from France. I'm betting he just got out of jail. I decide to pursue his condition as it falls under medical research, not because I'm fascinated by him or flirting with him or anything like that. I say, meaning, if you were in the room with the button, you know, the end of the world nuclear bomb button, just you and it, man and button, you'd press it just like that. He laughs, that wonderful, easy laugh again. Kapow! Kapow, oh, he says, illustrating the explosion with his hands. Kapow is right.
Fantastic.
Oh, Luke, I'm so sad to hear
My pleasure. I mean, this was not organized. It's just destiny, right?
It was absolutely
As
destiny.
Willem would call it, it was an accident.
Thank you.
Thank
We appreciate that. Seriously, that couldn't have been more perfect.
I know, as if I wasn't already in love with Oscar. Now I have like.
Well, no, but as Willem too, it's too bad. Okay, all right. Well, we can't really ask him to stay any longer.
Luca.
Right. Okay.
Okay, so switching gears now. We're going to read a little bit from Just One Day and Just One Year. And Jandy is going to be reading Willem initially, and I'm going to be reading Allison. And then just to mix things up, she's going to be reading Willem, and I'm going to be reading. No, I'm going to be reading Willem, and you're going to be reading his Harley girlfriend, and Lucia.
Right.
Yes.
Okay, wait.
Who's not really that.
I should put my
So, yes, you want to put your glasses on?
I'm okay.
You're okay? So this is, Willem and Allison are in Paris. He does not know her as Allison, by the way. He still calls her Lulu. And they're sitting down and they're having a conversation at a cafe. And she has asked him how he met this woman, Celine, who they've just seen. And he has sort of made a quip about that he was in love with, he fell in love with her once. And she has asked him, if you're still in love with her. And
What do you say?
yeah, so we're going to start here, and I'm Allison, and I'm saying, so you're not in love with her anymore? I run my fingers along the rim of my glass.
I never said I was in love with her.
You just said you fell in love with her once.
And I did.
I stare at him, confused.
There is a world of difference, Lulu, between falling in love and being in love.
I feel my face go hot, and I'm not entirely sure why. Isn't it just sequential? A follows B?
You have to fall in love to be in love, but falling in love isn't the same as being in love.
Willem peers at me from under his lashes.
I'm peering. Have you ever fallen in love?
No, I reply. I've never been in love.
Yeah. That's not what I asked. I asked if you've ever fallen in love.
The playfulness in his voice, it's like an itch I just can't scratch. I look at him, wondering if he always parses semantics like this. Willem puts down his fork and knife.
This is falling in love.
With his finger, he swipes a bit of the Nutella from inside his crepe and puts a dollop of it on the inside of my wrist. It is hot and oozy and starts to melt against my sticky skin. But before it has a chance to slither away, Willem licks his thumb and wipes the smear Nutella off and pops it into his mouth. It all happens fast, like a lizard zapping a fly.
This is being in love.
And here he takes my other wrist, the one with my watch on it, and moves the watch band around until he sees what he's looking for. Once again, he licks his thumb. Only this time, he rubs it against my birthmark, hard, as if he's trying to scrub it off. Being in love is a birthmark? I joke as I retract my arm, but my voice has a tremble in it, and the place where his wet thumbprint is drying against my skin burns somehow.
It's something that never comes off, no matter how much you might want it to.
You're comparing love to a stain? He leans so far back in his seat that the front legs of his chair scrape off the floor. He looks very satisfied. With a crepe or with himself, I'm not sure.
Exactly. I just want to tell everybody how much I love this book, how much I love Just One Day. I adore it. I think it is the most gorgeous story of a girl like breaking through all her boundaries and barriers to be her authentic self, and it's also a very hot, gorgeous, beautiful love story. But I just adore it. And I think it's some of the most gorgeous writing Gayle's ever done is in the last third of that book. I read it like 5 times.
So now we're going to read a section from Just One Year, and both books are divided into months. So this takes place in Willem's October. Allison's October, she is in college. She has come home from Europe, having woken up with Willem disappeared on her. She basically thinks she was used and abused. And more to the point is the life that she had sort of planned out for her, it's always been planned out for her, it no longer fits. So she's in college in her freshman year, and she's kind of struggling. So that's what's happening in her October. Willem in his own October, he's back in Holland. He's not doing so well himself. He's been kind of floundering about, and he sort of finds himself back in the same area of an ex-girlfriend and kind of falls into a relationship with her. And it's somebody that you saw in the first book, but I'm not going to tell you more than that. And so she's talking about, actually, she is bringing it up. She bumped into him in Paris, and she is bringing up the fact that they saw each other in Paris. And Ana Lucia starts by talking about that, and that's where we are, and we're going to see how the stain comes up again.
I just want to say that I want these two to be together so bad that I'm very upset that I have to read the part of this other girl that's coming between them. This is terrible. Okay, I start. I saw you. Oh, okay.
So she's the girl,
I'm the
now
girl.
I'm Willem, just
Yeah.
so you guys are clear. If I
I'm-
had the leather jacket, I think it would help,
Yeah.
but
I'm the horrible imposter, so hate me. Okay. I saw you with that girl in Paris. She was pretty.
she says it offhandedly, dismissively even, but something skitters to life in my gut, a kind of warning. Ana Lucia, but it's now as if Lulu's in the room too, just like that day in Paris when I ran into Ana Lucia and her cousins while I was in the Latin Quarter with Lulu. I want nothing but distance between these two girls. She was pretty, but you're beautiful, I say, trying to steer the conversation away. My words are true, but meaningless. Though Ana Lucia is probably technically prettier than Lulu, such contests are rarely won on technicalities.
What was her name?
I don't want to say her name, but if I don't say it, I'll arouse suspicion. Lulu, I say into the pillow. It's not even her real name, but it feels like a betrayal.
Lulu. Lulu, Ana Lucia says. Oh, a French girl. Was she your girlfriend?
Morning light is filtering through the window, pale and gray, tinting everything in here slightly greenish. Somehow, the gray dawn light made Lulu glow in that white room. Of course not.
Just another one of your flings, then.
Ana Lucia's laughter answers her own question. The knowingness irks me. That night in the art squat, after everything, Lulu had smudged her finger against her wrist, and I'd done the same. A code, kind of code for stain, for something that lasts, even if you might not want it to. It had meant something in that moment, at least. You know me, I say lightly.
Very upset at that point in that novel. So what else? Do you want to ask each other questions? Do you want to open it up to questions?
Do you guys have like raging questions here? Should we ask each other some questions? Oh, we already have some questions. We'll let you guys ask some questions. We're going to ask each other some questions. We're going to follow up. We're going to do that journalistic thing. And we're going to borrow some more clothing items from you all. Just to keep it interesting.
And now I'm actually waiting for other characters to appear from our novels.
I know, right?
I particularly would like the Guillermo Garcia character to arrive.
Yes, yeah. It's Javier Bardem in the house. So Jandy's, this book has been optioned for a film, and it's by Warner Brothers and by Denovi Pictures, who was the producing team that made If I Stay. So I think we all want Javier Bardem to play Guillermo. But it's so exciting that this is like, I think, the next big book that everybody's really excited to turn into this amazing movie.
Well, thank you.
All right, so questions.
So I read that you wrote "I'll Give You the Sun" in a dark room, like sensory deprived or whatever. Was that a conscious choice, or did that just happen?
Yes, Jonathan Franzen, please tell us.
Well, okay, it's true. So for people that don't know, I wrote this book for what, ironically, I give you the sun in this pitch black room, curtains drawn, earplugs in, sound machine blasting, like a complete lunatic. But out of the computer screen was light, and it was this weirdest thing where it became, for me, like psychologically, almost like this doorway or portal into the story. And I felt like I got into the characters and the story and lived in the world so much more completely than I ever had before. And I think a lot of it was because my whole world was blacked out, and it was lunacy, and it was like when like the UPS guy or friends would come over during the day, and I'd like go to the door, I'd be like this mole, like absolutely. But I don't think it was conscious. I think what must have happened, because I was thinking about this last night, and I must have woken up in the middle of the night one night and started working. And I sleep with earplugs and an eye mask because I'm a nut. Anyway, I mean, I'm earplugs and a sound machine. And I think what probably happened is I started working, and the only light was coming from the computer screen. I never bothered to turn on the light, and like 7 hours passed. And I think I was like, holy wow, this is a great way to work. This is perfect. And so I think I did it then the next day and the next day. That's how it happened. I highly recommend it for writers out there. It's wonderful.
I prefer to write like having my 2 children interrupt me every 3 or 4 seconds. I feel like that is just really amazing. That 12 seconds of concentration, I'm all there.
Well, you know what? Actually, I heard, this is very interesting. I heard this panel once about women writers, and they were talking about child rearing and writing and all that. And I can't remember which novelist was, a wonderful famous novelist that I can't remember her name, but she said that she actually believes having children, she never wrote a good character before she had children. There was something about raising a child, having a child rearing, that gave her an understanding of personality and character. Do you find that?
I think it sort of deepened things, but it does bring me to something else that we have in common about our books. It's a nice segue, which is that, I think particularly, I wrote If I Stay when my youngest daughter was 3, and a lot of that is sort of about parenting and the sacrifices you make for children. But it's been noted that none of my books, that in both of our books, the adults are very present. And even when they're kind of flawed, like Allison's mother or Willem's mother, they're kind of humanely flawed, and you understand the reasons behind them, and that for YA is unusual. And people have asked me about that, and it's automatic. It's not something that I try to do. It's just, I don't know if it's the fact that I identify both with my teenagers, but also with their parents, and so I'm not going to sort of have their parents be like these sort of cardboard cutouts that you just sort of kick down. I want them to be fully realized people because they're us. But at the same time, I also know that who is more important in your life when you're a teenager. As much as you can hate your parent at that time, they're still the most important people in your life. So why wouldn't they be there? And I love that in all of your books, the grandmother and the uncle in Sky, and the parents here and Guillermo are such important, fully realized characters. And I wonder, is that a conscious decision for you?
It's not. I don't think it's a conscious decision, but I couldn't imagine telling a story in another way. Also, because when I was young, the adults in my life played a big role in my life. I mean, they were huge. And also, I think as a writer too, I'm very intrigued by writing about all family dynamics, not just what's going on with the teens among themselves, but brothers, sisters, fathers, mothers, daughters. I'm very interested in whole family stories. And it's funny, I'm sure you guys have all seen If I Stay, have you? If you haven't, you've got to go and see it again and again. It's so wonderful. But it's interesting that you brought this up, because one of the things I really loved about it was the parents. And they came alive, I thought, in the movie in a fantastic way that was so faithful to the book, and they were so vibrant. I loved the actors that played the parents, and they were so, in some ways, the grief when I saw the movie was so profound because of that. I could just feel them in a way. I thought they did a wonderful job with your adults. They really did.
Grown-ups are people too. Back there.
So your newest books well, Gayle's, your newest book isn't out yet, it comes out in January. But the ones you have out now, they both have like dual narratives. What was it like? Did you have to get into different mindsets to like write each of those, or did they both flow naturally, or what was that like?
We had, I think, different processes, but kind of similar. You want to talk about how you actually wrote the books separate, right?
Well, for me, I wrote, as I said, the Noah story start to finish, and then the Jude story start to finish, and then afterwards, wound them together. But what was really interesting for me when writing is that I actually would, when I was working on Noah's story, I literally closed Jude's file and wouldn't let myself go into her story because I really wanted their voices to be completely distinct. And not only their narrative voices, but the world. Because when you're in Noah's story, you only see Jude through his eyes. And when you're in Jude's story, you only see Noah through her eyes. So I very much wanted the characters and the world to be authentic to the point of view character. And so I would definitely really, it was very separate until I started working on the third process, which was the interweaving of them, which was then it became sort of a whole. But in terms of like, it was also a wonderful relief to get to go from one to the other, because for me they were so different, the characters, and so I enjoyed that.
It's so interesting. One of the issues I sometimes have with a dual narrative is that if you cover up the bit where it tells you whose narrative it is, you cannot tell. And you could open up to any line in the book, and we could even try now the Coke and Pepsi test, and I would be able to tell you whose narrative it was.
Great, that makes me happy.
It is so clear. I mean, there's such different narratives, such different voices, and their voices are so different, filtered through the other person's perspective in the different time periods. So like, it's interesting to see that you really kind of had a church and state wall between the two of them, because that is actually clear. And I hadn't really thought about that. I had the same thing happen just because I wrote them as separate books. Although if I had to do it again with Just One Day and Just One Year, I would write both books before I release the first one, because I think that with books like this, I don't know how anybody writes a series. I think if all series writers could do this, they would write all 3 books in their series before releasing the first one, because I know people, you wind up like not having written something in that you wish you'd written, or at the end of Just One Day, when there's a scene where Allison sees Willem in the play, and she sees him with this red-haired woman, and all along as I was writing Just One Day, I thought it was going to be this girl Grace, who he meets in India, and at the very last minute, I thought maybe it's not going to be her, maybe it's going to be somebody else, and so I vagued it out a little bit, because there was this other very instrumental red-haired woman. I like redhead. Redhead's like a narcissist, sorry. And I'm not really even a redhead, that's the thing. So I want everybody to do redheads. I dye them all. But at the last minute I changed it up, which I'm so glad I did, because it wound up, this Grace character wound up not even being in this book. It's so hard to do that when you are writing one book sequentially after the second book.
Yeah, I can't imagine actually, because it's so interesting to me that you did that, because you were locked in. You had to. You absolutely had to, because so much of mine changed, when I started working on them together. That's a feat to me, a real feat that you did that and did it so well. And I would actually say the same thing for a book, that I feel like in both sets the voices are so completely distinct. I mean, absolutely. I think that was incredible the way you did that.
Do you have a preference writing for a male or female?
No, can't say I have a preference. I loved being a 13-year-old gay boy was like one of the true joys.
It's a dream come true. Thank you so much for this opportunity.
It was but honestly it was, and also because Noah has this visual sensibility that is explosive, it's nuts, and that was a pleasure. I felt a gift to be able to see through his eyes. So I don't have a preference, and Jude was a lot of fun for me too. So I don't have a preference. And it's scary though, because you do it and you try to be true to your characters when you're writing, and then you kind of cross your fingers when it goes into the world. If it works, people are going to say, well, you did it or you didn't,
One of my favorite things, I'm going to talk about the Grandma Sweet Wine's
No, well, first tell us if you have a preference.
It's weird. I really enjoy writing from the boy. Although that said, Cody and I Was Here, I think that was probably my favorite character to write from, and that's the book that comes out in January. Although, she's not a very girly girl. I don't want to say
No,
that. She's
yeah.
very kind of badass and she's very emotionally guarded. So those are quote unquote masculine traits, I guess. Not really, but. If it was like, Mia came very easily to me, but it was also like, who are you? And why do you talk so much more mature than I do? Because I talk like a 16-year-old Valley girl, and you sound very, very wise. And then Adam was like, oh, you're my people. The early where she went, Adam, when he's all tortured and jerky and superstitious like that, I think is probably the closest to me of any of my characters. Yeah.
That's wonderful. I feel like with Gayle's, I was thinking about this on the plane when I was coming here, that her girls, narrators, I love them so much, and I feel like I was lucky enough to I've read her new book, the one that's coming out in January, and it is so great. You guys have to all run and get it the second it comes out.
I'll do a little
you should.
modeling of it.
It is terrific, and this character, I mean, I feel like with all her characters, the girls like have this incredible narrative arc where they go through so much and these tremendous obstacles to finally like become their authentic selves. And this Cody's journey is so incredible and beautiful, and the love story is so sexy and wonderful. So it's a big treat.
I want to talk, and then we'll open it up to you guys, but I want to talk about Grandma Sweetwine's Bible.
Okay.
Because that was like the most delightful. It seemed like you must have had a lot of fun from that. I'm wondering how much of that is made up, or how much of that is like in Jandy family lore. Because what I know of Jandy family, I think, always walk with your left foot first, or is it your right foot?
Left.
Because tragedy.
Well, right foot first. Tragedy comes from the left.
which I think is very excellent advice.
Yeah, exactly.
Like a lot of that stuff, I'm like, that makes sense.
Okay, so people don't know what we're talking about. So so Noah has his paintings, but Jude has these superstitions. She has a Bible of superstitions that was left to her by her grandma.
Her pockets are always full of
like oranges and crazy stuff. And the thing is that yes, my mother was at my launch, which was really fun. So I got to out her to the world when I told them that yes, a lot of some stuff I made up, some stuff I got from this really wonderful 19th century tome that is the craziest book you've ever read. It's in my acknowledgments if you want to look it up. It's fantastic. But most of them, many came from my family, and they're even ones. I haven't seen her in 70 years. My friend from college just showed up. I'm going to start crying. Okay,
Is that some kind of superstition icon that you're carrying to ward off? I don't know. Is that meant for like reunions? Carry a brown bag with two orange little devil horns.
It's a flower.
It's a flower.
It's a flower. But anyway, now I totally lost my train of thought. But what was I saying? I know, sorry, I screamed in your ear. Anyway, a lot of it is based on family lore, and there's an essay coming out in a blog post on Monday that really goes into the details of my grandmother and her beliefs and things like, I'm not even allowed to tell you one of them because my publicist said that I can't tell the world because people will think I am too crazy.
All right, now you have to tell us. That's ridiculous.
I can't.
Sorry, Lindsay, can you go get me a Twix bar, please? Nobody's going to put this on the internet. Nobody's ever does any of this. Can I have another Twix?
Okay, I'll tell you what's in the essay. So it's not actually the real story. I'll tell you the real story later. But so there's this idea in my family, like there's crazy. My grandma was 70 years old with her butt in the air, on all fours looking for four-leaf clovers. She talked to her dead father through her dreams, and he always arrived in the dreams on a train. She's like, oh, the train came last night, which meant her father was visiting. And all right, I'm going to tell you. So then there's this idea whenever anything good in our lives was happening, or like someone said something wonderful was going to happen, she would make us put pee on our foreheads. She would say, go put pee on your forehead. And she said this to us our whole life, and my mother still says
And
this
these
to me
are
all the
Jews
time.
who think that when a bird craps on your head, it's good luck. So
Exactly.
It makes total sense to me.
Exactly. And there was red ribbons under the beds. I mean, it was really kind of kooky. So a lot of the superstitions are very much from my family. Like
That was too much. I did not know that this would be a fetish. Do we have any questions?
So what was your initial inspiration for If I Stay, or was there any inspiration at all?
Yeah, no, there was an inspiration. It was based, so about 7 years before I started writing the book, we had friends who were killed in a car crash, much like the one that me and her family are in. And it was a family of 4, and they were all killed. And by the time we got the news, they had all died. But I later found out that one of the children had lived longer and he'd been medevaced. And that was the thing. I mean, the whole thing was horrible and tragic and awful. But that was the thing that kind of haunted me, because I wondered, did this little boy know what had happened to the rest of his family? And did he choose to go with them? And, you know, that was just kind of a part of my grieving. I never thought I would write about it. I wasn't a novelist at the time even. And then 7 years later, I kind of woke up one morning and there was a 17-year-old cello player right there, clear as day. And a cello player, which was bizarre to me because I knew nothing about cello. I had no background in classical music, but I knew she was a cellist. And I knew she was going to answer that question as it pertained to her. And I sat down and I started writing.
How long did that first draft take you?
It was really fast. I started writing in October, and I had a draft that is not unlike the finished book by January. I say the book took 7 years and 3 months.
Yeah, amazing.
So your characters are so real and relatable, and I just wondered, like, what you guys do as writers to develop these characters with their quirks. I mean, obviously drawing on real life, but what else do you do to build their voice and their personalities?
I think for me it happens through draft after draft after draft. I mean, sometimes you're lucky. Like in I'll Give You the Sun, certain characters arrive fully formed. Noah kind of had a strong voice right from the beginning, and I knew who he was. And Drew took a little longer to wrap my mind around, but Guillermo in the book just popped. And I think into my life, fully formed. I knew what he looked like. I knew what his voice sounded like.
What he smelled like.
I knew what he smelled like. This guy was real from the beginning. But I think it's with every character, sometimes it takes longer than others to really find out who they are. And that's why I believe people, it's good to take time with your work and really, and then sit in a dark room with earplugs in. No. But what about you?
I think the same thing. It's you get to know them as you get to know anybody. Like it's getting to know them through time, and you spend time together, and it's like, oh, I didn't know you were into that. Yeah. And there are certain characters who arrive fully formed. Mia arrived fully formed. Cody, of I Was Here, arrived fully formed. But there's other characters. Allison and Willem both took a really, really long time to get to know. And it just happens through draft after draft after draft, and through listening to this sort of gut feeling, because you know when you're telling the story authentically. You can tell. You want to lie to yourself sometimes. You want to be like, it's fine. Kick it under the rug. There's no dust in here. Everything's clean. But if you're honest with yourself, you know when a character feels true and authentic to yourself. And you have to just keep going, keep chipping away. And because sometimes it comes at the beginning of the process, I think it can be disheartening when it comes later. But I think because just one day, just 1 year, I don't know if this was your experience, and you just said Noah came pretty fully formed. Because they were so architectural and so much was about the plotting, it took a lot longer to get to that point. But I eventually did get there. So I do know that eventually, if a book is meant to be, you'll get there. But it's, it's listening to your characters and listening to yourself.
And also, are you a writer?
No, not particularly, but I'm just interested because I feel like they're so real, and that seems like it would be difficult.
I was just going to say, if anyone is a writer, in terms of this, I can't remember who said it, they said, hard writing is easy reading. And so I think when characters...
I'm a journalism professor.
Yeah, I love that. But it's it's very much, I feel like sometimes when you really... The exciting part is when they start surprising you. And there's things that happen in this book that are bad. These characters do some bad things. And I didn't know that at first, and when I realized, I was like, oh no, you do not do that. And they're like, yeah, I did. And you're like, oh my God, no readers are going to be able to deal with you. And so it's very interesting that when they start telling you, and then things kind of switch, then it gets really exciting.
I think we have time for one more question, and then we're going to give away 3 copies of I Was Here with some kind of trivia.
Yeah.
So we can't go on without mentioning Joe Fontaine.
Thank you.
We're in love with Joe Fontaine.
I was just thinking about Joe for my trivia question.
Totally. I mean,
I'm so happy.
We work together and having a hard day
At a bookstore.
Joe Fontaine. It just makes the world better. I mean, love him. Loved The Sky Is Everywhere. Loved the characters. Just, you have grief. Just nailed.
But I just wondered about the relationship with Toby and Lenny. What made you go down that road with them?
Well, like Gayle, I think that book came from a really tremendous loss in my life, and so it was I was very much learning with Lenny how to deal with grief, how grief and love were conjoined, things that she learned. I kind of learned along with her in writing that book. It was healing for me that way. But I feel like something that I did see a lot is grief is strange, and it's so emotional and so passionate. Grief is a passionate emotion, and it can be so many different things. And I think for Lenny, who is this young girl in this very particular circumstance, who's always been in the background, who is at a puberty, whose hormones are raging, for her, I feel like the grief, it got confused, I think, for both her and Toby, and they felt like they had to connect to Bailey through their physical connection. There was too much passion, there was too much grief, and it just translated to passion. I think that's what happened.
That always made such sense to me. I mean, it felt so real that they would do that. And I think you hear about people doing that, coming together after a death with somebody you never thought you would, or somebody who maybe is inappropriate, because there's that pent-upness, and there's so many sort of feelings that arise. And yeah, the fact that it is this passion, this urgency, and the love of Bailey, and it would get kind of sublimated that way. Yeah.
And to feel like they're the only one who understands.
One more, I guess. Can we do one more, Mel? Sure. And then some trivia questions.
So what did you think of the movie version of If I Stay? Were you involved in it?
I was involved. I came on board as an executive producer, so that kind of meant that I was like, they would send me drafts of the script, and I would offer, I'd give them notes, and I was on set for a bit of it, and I got to see sort of early cuts of it, and I was happy with it. I was really happy with it. I thought, it was very interesting seeing the sausage get made, because when I heard that they were going to make If I Stay into a movie, I'm like, good luck with that. Like, I thought that was the really not a smart candidate for a film, because of the way that I wrote it. It's sort of, so much of it is internal in Mia's mind. The structure goes back and forth between these sort of non-chronological, non-thematic flashbacks. So it was interesting to sort of see how, in order to kind of translate the emotional experience of the book, what kind of changes they had to make. And so it made total sense to me, and I was really pleased, because I thought that it did give you the emotional experience of the book, and I loved seeing the music come to life. So that part was just like, wow, like here it is written, but it is, to see her Juilliard audition, or to hear Adam's band, was fantastic. All right, let's do some trivia. So I'm going to think of do you want to do your own trivia? No. I'm going to give away one of yours. All right, well, the first, I'm giving away 3 copies of I Was Here. My upcoming, tomorrow, you want to come up with some trivia for me?
I was going to say your favorite sibling is here, true or false.
Yeah. All right, so from The Sky is Everywhere, what is the name of the romantic place where Lenny and Joe go to sometimes smooch?
I know.
Yeah, I know you know. You're like the Joe Fontaine people. So yes, what is it? Yes.
Is it the outdoor bedroom? That forest bedroom?
What is it?
The forest bedroom.
Forest bedroom.
We're giving it away with forest bedroom?
I think so.
All right, forest bedroom. There you go. Anyway, actually one more, because sunglasses lady, you get a copy here. So you already got one. So one more piece of trivia. Do you want to give, now you give something from my book trivia.
Yeah. Thank you. Okay. What instrument did Mia's father play?
So easy.
Oh, come on. No, sorry. All right,
okay.
all right, we'll do another.
No, it's too late. Give it. Come on.
John?
And we have a winner. And sunglasses lady, for your generosity. Too bad Luke was not here.
Yeah, right.
Now we do the singing, is that right?
Dancing. We'll turn up the volume.
The interpretive dancing.
Yes, exactly.
I like singing My Name is Luca now. My name is Luca.